This week on The Caller, I get to sit down with Andy No, who is a world-renowned journalist and specialized in Antifa. Andy, thanks for being here with me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
In your most recent testimony, you held up a picture of a photo of graffiti on a wall that said, "Murder Andy No."
Yes, I printed it out, not because it's that I take pleasure in sharing this. I think it's important for the public to see the type of threats that I live under and how these people incite violence day in and day out when they're not directing at me online or showing up at my family's home or, in the case of a year ago, actually beating me on the street.
It seems like you're quite a threat to Antifa, and they're trying to intimidate you. Do you know why?
I do know why. They make it very clear. They say that Andy No is a threat to our community, and what they mean is that I don't hide what their identities are. When police release photographs of bookings into the public record and names and what the charges are, I put that out for the public to see. I'm very fortunate that I have the large following that I do, so that my message is amplified, gets out.
Oh, that bitch Andy's gonna be here, so I'm gonna beat him
No!
up.
Beat his ass! Andy, no!
Andy No's gonna be here?
Not for
I
long.
remember last year, many of my mentors and colleagues were telling me, "Andy, why are you focusing on Antifa? They're just a ragtag group of street hooligans. They have no national significance or international significance. You should focus on a different beat." But for me, like I noticing that at that time they were diversifying their tactics to be multi-pronged and going into the institutions and in amplifying their message into the mainstream left.
Antifa,
the anti-fascist movement,
known to not only clash with bigots, but also sometimes with police.
We are unapologetic about the reality that fighting fascism at points requires physical militancy.
The events of the past 4 weeks have demonstrated that the groundwork had already been laid now for several years, actually going back many years, but particularly the fruits of the past few years of labor were able to be activated essentially overnight in the form of affinity groups who mobilized and participated in violent riots and destruction and looting from coast to coast.
In the recent testimony, you held up these pamphlets that you received when you went undercover into the Chaz/Chopped zones. What were in the pamphlets exactly? Did it mention anything about if the person gets arrested by the police or questioned, what not to say? Was there anything like that in the pamphlets?
Yeah, so you're talking about these numerous pamphlets that I received while undercover in that so-called autonomous zone, which had another murder this week, by the way. It's on its third week since it's been established. Before I get to the particular strategies that are laid out in the literature, I'll just talk about what I've witnessed on the ground going back to 2016. Antifa Black Bloc is effective because the number of people who actually are dressed up and know the Black Bloc tactics are relatively small. I think at its largest in Portland, there would be maybe 200 maximum. And this is like an event that would have several thousand people. So they make up a minority percentage-wise. But they're effective because they are just one part of a large demonstration and gathering. The other people serve a number of purposes. They're the people who are unmasked, for example. So these can just be allies and sympathizers and fellow travelers, people who are not necessarily part of the exact same anarchist communist ideology and are not familiar with the tactics of organizing, but generally share the same goals of being, let's say, anti-Trump or anti-Republican or anti-conservative. So they'll give cover to them. They'll protect them. So it's very important for them for Antifa to continue to mainstream their message on the left, which they've been very successful at. That's why they always say that Antifa just means anti-fascist, and every liberal is anti-fascist. So they try to appeal to the liberal, but if you look at their literature, they hate liberals as much as they hate conservatives. They want to burn down the entire all institutions that make up the United States. They want to destroy the country, literally. You see that, unfortunately, many Democrats and many liberal commentators are now echoing this sentiment, right? That you can't reform the United States. It's about remaking it completely, which is why they're going after systematically everything that makes up nationhood. So attacking not just symbols and history and the flag or the national anthem, but also, according to some polling data that was put out by Professor Eric Kaufman, that there's quite a large number of people who self-identify as liberal who would like the Constitution changed. So Antifa's agenda is very much successful, and it has the street violence is just one part of it. Going back to these various manuals and booklets that I received, the literature that they give out at events, whether they be book fairs or in this case, the Seattle Autonomous Zone, they tend to be more so propaganda in terms of brainwashing people and introducing them to theory. So this stuff does have, some of them did have things on strategies, like this one called Blockade, Occupy, Strike Back. This one did provide instructions on how to use people as human shields in crowds, make homemade bombs using light bulbs. There's some of that stuff, which I was surprised that they were giving it out so openly. But then again, this was their autonomous zone, so they believe that anybody who was in there had already been fully vetted by their border security.
What is the when you first go to Chaz or Chop or whatever it is, whatever that's called, when you first go there, what type of entry is that like? Like, what is the entry process like? Do they look you up on social media, like cross-reference you before you enter? What is the security like exactly?
So they actually just do profiling based on how you look. So if you look like somebody who they have a caricature in their mind of being a right-winger, so if you're white, for example, maybe if you look athletic, and of course if you're wearing anything that is perceived to be patriotic. So even if you're wearing like a suit, for example, or very nice formal clothes, that would instantly mark you out. So as long as you know how to dress and how to carry your demeanor in a certain way that fits in, they'll just let you in. So it was very open and porous, and that became a problem for them in that it attracted criminal and gang elements, and we saw very quickly that devolved into numerous deadly crimes, as well as rapes and robberies, and unfortunately the autonomous zone is still happening as of this interview.
Andy, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I really appreciate it. The audience is going to love it.
Thanks for having me on.